Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Guenther. I'm the chapter director here for Startup Grind in New Orleans. And this week we have some very special events. They've had a couple of them going on already. This is all part of Global Entrepreneurship Week, GEW. And so we're very happy to be partnering with Global Entrepreneurship Week. And as you know, Startup Grind is pretty much the one of, if not the largest global entrepreneurship community. So we foster interactions with seasoned entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs all across the globe, and we connect people and resources. So one of our main parts of Startup Grind is the idea of not just making contacts, but actually making meaningful, lasting contacts and really friendships. And so I'm really excited today to have one of the people that I've wanted to have on for Startup Grind for many years, and really one of the first friends that I met when I moved into the entrepreneurship side of things, and that's Jack Reiner from Elliptical Hosting today. And so Jack has been an entrepreneur since, as he puts it, before entrepreneurship was kind of the term and the cool thing. And I wanted to get some feedback from him today. But, so I'll let him kind of give you a brief background on some of the things that he's done and where he's going, and we'll just kind of open up after our initial talk. We'll open up to any questions that you may have, and just type them in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer them. I'll have to kind of lean over to the chat because my eyesight's horrible, but um, that should work. So with that, Jack, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Thank you, Jim. I am Jack Reiner. I am Chief Technology Officer and founder of ellipticalhosting.com. We are a specialty website hosting company. We specialize in website hosting security, website speed, and customer experience. We are actually hitting our 25th year in business this month. It was November of 96. It was actually like Thanksgiving of 1996 that we decided to start and got going on with it right away. So I would say in 25 years, we're not exactly a startup, but we are actually quite entrepreneurial. We are undergoing our fifth business model iteration in technology, not a surprise, right? You have to keep kind of reinventing yourself. I was just actually talking this over recently, and I would say you could still recognize us from where we were 25 years ago as the same company, but each time we have kind of narrowed our focus and made us a deeper understanding of what we've done. We've become more and more specialized through all of these iterations.
So that's interesting, because one of my favorite people in entrepreneurship is Steve Blank, and he literally wrote the book.
Okay.
And business model canvas and lean launchpad, which is what almost everybody uses these days. But one of the things that he always points out is that no business model or business plan survives first contact with customers. And so when you talk about going through new iterations and pivot, well, I use the word pivoting or adjusting your business plan over all of these years, I find that fascinating because I think a lot of new entrepreneurs, go into it thinking, well, I'm going to put out this business plan, and it's the old saying that you build a better mousetrap, and the world will beat it, get it past to your door. And that's really not the way it is.
Not at all.
So tell me a little bit more about the idea of, I want to come back to exactly what the hosting part means, because me, again, I'm not that tech savvy with this field. So
sure.
So what does website hosting actually mean? But I also want to talk about how you've it changed in these iterations over the years.
I'd be happy to. So in 1996, we kind of grew the company with the growth of the internet to the public. The internet had been around a while, a bit longer, and I had been on it in various jobs prior to that. I myself am a software developer, and that's how I bring the technology in from there. So in 96, we're an internet company, whatever that meant back in
Mhm.
1996. And we tried doing anything that was related to the internet, very quickly settled into website development and email. And over time, we decided, we're not designers, right? We're not graphically oriented. And
Uh-huh.
we started working with graphic agencies, graphic design agencies, and marketing agencies, and would actually have them do that part of it. And we would just do the technical back end, the programming side of websites, but database driven websites. That was absolutely our core.
Mhm.
Being in software ourselves, because websites to me are just software. They really are software.
Mhm.
They really do run on computers. That's still there from my own programming in
Mhm.
the 80s and 90s. And that's always been our approach to it. Where was I going with this? What was
I'm pivoting, but I've got like so many questions for you,
Oh,
and
okay.
all kinds of new stuff
So
are opening up.
uh, I think it was around 2003 or so, we stopped even creating websites. We had been just reselling others under us, and we just
Mhm.
started handing that off directly. We
I
were just
see.
getting in the way and doing only the hosting and the
I
programming.
see.
By 2014, the website hosting had become our largest line of business.
See.
People would actually leave us for development somewhere else, but they would keep the hosting with us. They would go to a new
Okay.
design agency,
Okay.
but they would say, we want to keep the hosting with our company. I was like, wow, so we're doing something really good here. And by 2014, that was our largest line of business. It's a very steady business, which I like. Software can be kind of peaks and valleys. And so by 2014, was that 7 years ago, I made probably the single biggest decision of one of these iterations was we're only going to focus on hosting, website and email. And immediately our revenue kept on going up. The first time I had to say no to turn down a software project was emotionally difficult. That was
Yeah.
me. Absolutely. That's
Mhm.
what I do. My degree is computer science. That's what I love. But right away, it was clear that was the right decision for us in this place and time. And that's what we've done the last 7 years. And now our current iteration is a little bit more of kind of a little more on the business side of things that we're making some changes. But overall, you know, I would agree, like you just said, right? Your business plan doesn't survive first contact with
Mhm.
customers. Also, regardless of what industry you're in, over time, your market changes, right?
Sure.
The boomers are getting
Sure.
older. They're kind of getting out of ending their careers. The Gen X, which is what I am, are also kind of getting up there. Actually, the first ones are starting to reach retirement age. The millennials, which we hear about an awful lot, are absolutely where the action is right now. And the Gen Zs, even, which my children are Gen
Mhm.
Z, are coming in,
You know,
and they buy differently.
that's that's one of the really neat things. So prepping for this last night, and this is, something I haven't had a chance to talk with you about. So I don't know where, you
Where
never
you
know
gonna
where these
go, right?
conversations are going to go. But I was reading about the evolution of the internet,
Mhm.
and they went over the internet 1.0, 2.0, and now 3.0. And
Okay.
this is, so I'll go over this
I
because
don't know how. I've
I
not
thought
heard
this
that,
was
and I don't know how they
fascinating.
define these.
So the way they loosely defined it is 1.0 was static web pages where you could go look at a web page and see something.
Okay.
That you
Yeah, okay,
two
fine.
two
That's 90s and early
two
2000s, I'm
point
guessing.
2.0 was the idea that you could now put your own information on those websites and interact back and forth with the internet.
All right.
And now they're saying 3.0 is the idea that you're going to, and the classic thing in 2.0, you were the information. In other words,
Okay.
the big
Yeah.
companies were making money off of, looking at what you're doing on the internet and producing ads for that.
Okay.
And now they're saying in 3.0, it's going to move more to where you become the owner of your own information and you're responsible for basically selling that to these companies.
So it's like what kind of social media
it, it,
driven then?
it's well, social media where you're more in control of who gets to see where you're going. So it's
Mhm.
more with the VPN protection, things like that. So it was
Okay.
really neat. So, when you talk about pivoting and how things have changed, that came to mind to me, because I find the whole thing, to be really interesting there. So to I know you've had a lot of people that you've worked with over the years.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I wanted to bring up, because you and I have talked about this a lot, is when did you and how did you get involved with Goldman Sachs?
Oh, okay. So in 2017, we brought our company through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. And this was, maybe it is almost a pivot actually in and of itself. This was eye-opening for me. I mean, my undergraduate is computer science. I am the quintessential quiet, shy, introverted computer programmer, computer guy. Well, once you're in business, especially if you're the owner of it, all of a sudden you have to be able to sell to people. You have to explain what you're doing. You definitely have to talk to people a lot. And really didn't have any kind of background for the business side of what I do. We've always been, very, very strong with the technical part.
Sure.
We've been learning on the business side of things. So in 2017, an associate of mine, a different company, went through it, and I was impressed with what I saw her doing, right? I mean, I was at her office one day and I could see the kinds of questions, the homework she had. I was really, really quite impressed with it. I was like, I want to do that. So I applied and I got in. I was told later, for like 30 or so slots, there were 120 applications. So we were, 1 out of 4 chance of making it. And I felt pretty good that we got that far. The program was eye-opening from the business point of view. And I've been implementing, I guess, those kinds of changes ever since that we've seen right there. And I've been pleased with that.
So, why New Orleans? A little bit of background about you. Why?
Well, I grew up here. I live here.
Okay.
My father came down here in I think in '64, and I was about a year or two old. And I've been here ever since. Went to school locally, went to college locally, met a girl in college who lives here, married, we're raising kids. The only time I think that we've ever seriously considered leaving, and I've never been against, remember, like we had to stay, but things have always been fine. Hurricane Katrina, which was 2005, and by this point the business was a few, 5, 6, 7 years old already, and definitely a going concern. It was good. It was the only time I ever really seriously thought I shouldn't come back. And the only time I've ever thought, I kind of wish maybe I didn't have a business, because if I had a job, I could just quit and find another job, but it's hard to walk away from established customer base. That's about it, though. Otherwise, we've been fine here as far as I'm concerned. Our children all grew up here by this point, and I'm still not. I'm neither committed to staying nor committed to leaving, if that makes any sense. But it's fine the way things are.
It does, because literally your company, you can run your company from a beach or wherever you want.
I have in fact gone on vacations. I actually, something I don't talk about too much. When my son was in Boy Scouts, I was an adult leader. We would go up to the Ozark Mountains in northern Arkansas. I didn't tell clients or anything, and I could actually hit my servers from my tent in the morning. And I would do that. I would just wake up and I'd deal with any issues that came in overnight. And this was years ago already. And we can do it from anywhere. That part is true. And my wife and I might decide to be digital nomads. As it is, our team is entirely remote. I'm the only one who ever comes into the office here. My project manager is not far, but on the North Shore part of New Orleans. My admin assistant also in the North Shore, different area. I've got a sysadmin in Southern Florida. I've got a sysadmin in Virginia. There's 4 of us.
So, one of the things that it really inspired me to have this, conversation with you today is a conversation that you and I had probably a month or 2 ago. We sat down over coffee one day, as both of us are coffee fanatics.
Right.
And
yes, indeed.
And in Italy today.
We are in, I believe this is Venice, based on the image. We are in Renaissance Venice today with this backdrop.
But,
This is a screen in the office that we have.
but we started talking about how your business was handling the whole quarantine and what was going on recently. And this is a great thing to talk about with pivots because I've seen a ton of companies that adapt to this new changing system, some of them that have survived without adapting, and some of them that have not survived because of the new changing things that have gone on because of all of the COVID-19. And so I when I started talking with you about some of the things you've done to adapt, so I'd really like to get into a lot of details about this because I think this is kind of the substance for a lot of the people that are listening about this is what are the tactics that and tactics sounds a little weird,
It's
but
attack, right.
what are the things that you did again to pivot?
Okay.
I know, and I'll let you go in a second, but I know that before COVID, you were very much you were still working on a global scale, but you were really focused a lot more on working with other businesses in the city, and now you're really looking at expanding out further and further because of this. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So
That is all correct. So even prior to the quarantine, we have clients on 6 out of 7 continents already, waiting for some kind of referral to somebody in Antarctica. But other than that, we're on every continent, and I like that.
mhm,
Right, the sun never sets on elliptical hosting.
mhm,
Uh, but the quarantine has definitely, we've been able to kind of land on our feet with that in a big way. I was already very comfortable with Zoom. Zoom is
mhm,
not new to me. Zoom is not new to most tech people in the first place. We were already Zooming. I was already
mhm,
using webinars as learning tools for myself, right? And certainly in this industry, you're always having to learn what's coming down the
mhm,
road to position yourself and what you need to work with. When the quarantine started, and I have a couple of family members that are immune compromised, so we were very strict. Didn't come into the office probably close to a year,
mhm,
and we got our vaccines the first chance we could. But prior to that, we were doing them staying at
mhm,
home. We started using Zoom to reach out to meet people very early on. Um, I actually I would never met my project manager in person. I think only once now in the year and a half that she's worked with us. And even then, it's been only one time. We had worked together more than a year before we actually happened to have a meeting together
mhm,
in person. But we were Zooming every day. We'd start the day off with
mhm,
Zoom, set what we needed to do, and then move on from there. Zoom allows that. It allows us to be, we're together, but we would not have to be. And certainly the people
mhm,
watching us are not right here. It allows us to have meetings. So I started using Zoom to reach out to other parts of the country. This is not meant as a commercial for eventbrite.com, but that has played a big part of it. It really
sure,
has.
no, no, no,
And it was suggested to me by somebody.
yeah,
It was like, go to eventbrite.com and search business networking.
it's a really neat
I've
idea.
done it here in the New Orleans area.
Mhm,
I've done it for Atlanta, Baltimore. I've Zoomed other parts of the world. I've actually
uh-huh,
Zoomed in other countries as well. There's a group out of Ireland that's putting together sort of a business networking group for Europe. And I was talking, and fortunately it was in English because that's actually my only language.
uh-huh,
But there was a few people in Ireland, a lady from Norway, Italy, Israel, Spain, and actually somebody from Israel as well, which is not
mhm,
Europe. And I feel like there was 1 or 2 more people from somewhere else in Europe. And it was very well received. They've been emailing me ever since,
mhm,
like, you should join us, come do us. It's like, but I have made the decision to focus on the US. Like I said, we do have clients elsewhere. We have time zones. We do have some language concerns, and
sure,
we will work with anybody anywhere. But
mhm,
there's plenty right here in the US for us to work
that's
with. I titled this "Fortune Favors the Bold," right from the old
mhm,
Roman expression. It really should be probably more like "Fortune favors the brave."
mhm,
Bravery. I was thinking about this. Bravery comes in a few different flavors, perhaps.
okay,
Obviously, charging uphill against an enemy fire in battle is certainly bravery.
Mhm.
But so is doing something you just personally are afraid of. And if that's merely picking up the phone and calling prospects. I mean, I actually started my company with cold calling.
Mhm.
God, I hope I never have to do that again. But I got my very first customer that way. That's picking up the phone and calling. If that's what you're afraid of, lean into it. As my business coach likes to tell me, lean into it and do it. And it won't be comfortable. You won't like it. If you do it enough, it will start to become less uncomfortable over time. And eventually it will become normal. I feel like I'm probably presenting reasonably well right now, talking to you in front of our TV camera, right in front of our TV audience, as we used to say. This is all a learned behavior. I truly am an introvert. I truly am shy. I truly didn't like talking to people when I started this company. And I've had to learn all of that over time. That's the kind of bravery I'm talking about right here. I wasn't sure how I would feel about barging into somebody else's Zoom in another part of the world. Sorry about the background phone there if you're hearing it. And I've been on a few Zooms where I felt I was probably not very welcome there. Well, guess what? It is easier to click close on a Zoom than it is to stand up and walk out of a physical meeting. So, but I have hit home very well with a Zoom out of Atlanta, where they meet once a month, and I have met a number of the kinds of prospects that I'm trying to meet, and I can follow up with them. Now that the rest of the world is comfortable with Zoom, or it could be Teams, it could be Bevy, it could be any number of them, but Zoom is sort of the generic term for it. Now that the rest of the world is comfortable with Zoom, my market has greatly expanded beyond the New Orleans area, tremendously. I could be, in fact, going all around the world. I'm choosing not to. We'll do work, like I said, with anybody, but there's enough right here in the U.S. to deal with.
So I mean, this just kind of brought up all kinds of memories for me. My networking experience was, so when I was in graduate school, my old PI would always say that, networking was basically for people that didn't have talent. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. That was, or at least that was the impression. That was the impression that I got from him. And it wasn't until years later that I was horrible at networking. I mean, I went to meetings and I was the wallflower in the back that just didn't talk to anybody. And what I found is when I started actually meeting with people and going to events, that at the very beginning I had to give myself tasks when I went there, and I would say, okay, I will talk to these three people, and I need to, and I went with specific goals that I would say, okay, this person, I need to have these three things done, and that's why I'm going to this meeting. And it really wasn't enjoyable for me at first. It was very uncomfortable.
Right.
And now it's gotten to the point that it's much more enjoyable. I really, I like hearing about people's stories. So let me follow up and ask you a little bit about that. So it was, was your networking adolescence clunky like
Absolutely it was. Unquestionably. I was awful at it for the longest. But so what?
Yeah.
I still met people. And being kind of informational oriented, right? Informational data oriented. I actually did what you did. I was like, I need to meet three people. I need to kind of like, I could follow a list of things to do. I need to shake 12 hands or whatever.
I had to do things like that.
And I absolutely have in my planner, I need to go to 5 networking events a week, or 3, or 12, or whatever number works for you. For me, it was never a very high number. And then I need to follow up with people, and that's been an area that I have struggled with. That's some of the bravery.
Really big thing, and
even today, actually, this morning I was at a chamber event, ran into a person that I met twice in the last month and a half, who's specifically asking for something that we do, and it's like, dang, why am I need to call you. You need to call you this
right
afternoon.
Now,
right.
Yes. And that's interesting, because this was one of the things that I try to take my own medicine with this too.
Yeah.
When I would teach students about interacting and networking, the first thing that I would tell them is, okay, you had a really good meeting. You tell me who you talked with.
Mhm.
Now I want you to write them an email, and it just has to be a single line, saying, I enjoyed our conversation last night. And that way it
Oh,
refreshes their
I
memory.
like that.
I mean,
I
just
like
just
that.
just something really simple. I said, if you can't, if you can't do anything else, you don't have to. Just say, I enjoyed our conversation last night, or I liked our topic. My favorite is, I met with somebody last night from Orleans school board,
Mhm.
and we're gonna follow up this week. She just sent me an email, and we're gonna follow up
Oh,
this week and talk about education and entrepreneurship. So we're getting coffee at
yeah.
Bean Gallery. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
excited again.
Yeah. Always there.
One of the favorites in the
So
city. But
that makes me think of times.
okay.
One is my good friend Connie. I'm
Mhm.
not going to give last names here of
Okay.
this, but Connie once said in a coffee and gratitude networking group that I like to go to, every month is a do-over. I actually say now every day is a do-over, which means don't beat yourself up because I didn't follow up with
Mhm.
this guy the first time I met him a month ago, or even when I ran into him again 2 weeks ago, but I will follow up with him today. Let go. The past is in the
Right.
past. Let it go. Let
Mhm.
it go, right? From
I
that song,
yeah.
from that movie. And just, you're in the now. Just start now. Don't
Mhm.
worry about those. You can get back to them if you feel like it or not. Second one is, you're not networking to make sales. That's something that took me a while to learn.
Right.
Is like, I'm not going to make a sale first meeting you. I just want to meet and start a connection, start a relationship. And we fortunately are in a relationship business,
Mhm.
even though it's technology, and certainly website hosting can be commoditized. It has been, but in our 25 years now, our longest tenured clients are 22 of those years. So we clearly are working at a deeper, stronger relationship level than just a click to buy and this is the cheapest price at the moment kind of thing. You're just trying to meet people and start the beginnings of a relationship. And even then, when you ask to meet, not necessarily meeting to sell per se, trying to move it along. So those were the two things: is you're not networking to sell, and
You,
every
you
day
know,
is a do-over. Don't worry about it. It's
you
okay
know,
if you fell.
Jack, the idea of not needing to sell is such an important thing, because I can tell you that I've run into, people at events that you can tell it from the first moment that they open their mouth that it's the hard sell.
Yes.
And this is why you need me and my services.
Here's my
and
business card. Call me.
and
Here's my
here's my
business card. Call me. I
business
know those
card. And it
types.
becomes a trading. And that's one of the things, again, that I like about Startup Grind, is that it's not like that. Startup Grind is very similar. You know that when you talk about just meeting people all across the country, I have got on calls with people from Shanghai, Buenos Aires.
Oh, all right.
I mean, all over Israel, all over the globe, and we'll just sit there and chat. And sometimes there's opportunities and neat things that come out of it. Sometimes, in fact, one of my friends is actually doing a presentation for one of the Florida chapters this week as part of, and she's, Kibby. I won't say last names, but
Right.
it was an interaction that came out here from our meetings, and so I've met just these wonderful people, all over the globe. It's really just opened my mind to so many different, not only people and experiences, but what I love about it is all of the different accents and dialects that I come across. It's just fascinating to me. I just, I could listen to people talk in the different tone that they
Mm-hmm.
have, for hours and hours.
Hours.
I just think it's so neat. People say, oh, well, from New Orleans, you have a neat accent and everything, but I think the rest of the world's got so many other cool things with it. So I absolutely agree with you on all of these things, and especially the idea of how to go about interacting and networking with people. It's just so important that you're not selling yourself per se,
Mhm.
but you're having a genuine conversation, and the sales just happen if they're there.
Yeah,
You're
and
not
it is
forcing
business, but yes, I would
you're
agree.
not forcing it. That well, you need my service, or you need this. It happens kind of organically at that point, and that's I think the very best ways to approach things. Um, so how about I'll kind of switch a couple little questions, and I need to see what time. We're right about 30 minutes right now. So
Okay.
maybe another 10 minutes of us, and then a couple of minutes for any audience questions that we'll have.
Okay.
Um, but so how did you come up with the name Elliptical Hosting? Where
Ah,
did it come from?
so this is actually a rebrand. The
Okay.
company was originally called the Creative Internet.
Okay.
I wanted to focus on the creative side of things because I knew we had the technical part. And in 2014, this was part of that. That was some deep soul searching there. And actually, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to talk about a book, Good to Great.
Okay.
I can't remember the author's name, but it has a red cover. Good to Great. Chapter 5 is called the Hedge Hog Concept. And that's actually how we our biggest pivot ever, our biggest, not pivot, but iteration. You figure out three things. What can you be the best at the world in? Where is your passion? And what can you do to make money? And my business coach at the time made me make lists 100 items for each one of those three. I topped out around 75 to 80 on each of them. I couldn't quite make the 100.
Oh,
But then you compared them, and where all three of them overlapped was where to focus.
I see.
And that was actually website hosting.
I see.
This is kind of the very short answer to that.
Uh-huh.
And that process probably took 7 or 8 months.
I can believe it. Yeah.
You do this, and then quite frankly, maybe you'd have a glass of wine to really,
Uh-huh.
she made me do like things like,
Sure.
what have you done? It's like, well, we
Mhm.
set up email. What does that mean? Well, we did this, we break it down smaller and smaller and smaller to get there. So at the time when we did this, I wanted to rebrand. We did a complete rebrand. I also needed to change the name. I needed the word hosting in the name of the company. I felt like I needed to be a little more specific. And elliptical, because at the time, the biggest part of security was the SSL security certificate.
Okay.
And there was the new elliptic curve cryptography, which was coming out. And I named it for that. That's actually where the name comes from. Now it's fun because it's
Uh-huh.
I'm going to say it's circular. It's not circular. It's elliptical. But so we can have hosting that revolves around you. And if I'm remembering correctly, planetary orbits are elliptical
Yes.
in nature. So that works for me. We've never really, we might need to lean into that as well. I grew up in the aerospace industry. My father was
Mhm.
an engineer with NASA.
Okay.
So I actually might want to kind of go back into the whole
Was
planetary.
Stennis or
I was at Nisha.
Nisha? Okay.
out here.
Excellent.
So that's where I came up with the name
Mhm.
from. And a couple of times recently, I've thought about maybe we should rebrand. It's like, come on, let's just focus on what we're doing. We've
Mhm.
got the word hosting in there, and that's that. I would not wait to find the perfect name.
Mhm.
It's not about the name, not really.
You know, I one of the concepts I'd almost disagree with you on
Yeah.
this.
All right. Okay.
In fact, I will, because
Imagine
I've
every
I've
marketing
I've,
person would disagree with me.
I've agonized over the name, because one of the first things that my old PI used to say to me, and it comes whenever I was writing a publication,
Mhm.
and I'd have, we'd go through the steps of putting a publication together, and I would always struggle with the title, and he would sit there and go, "Where's the title on this?"
Mhm.
So he's like, "Look, the title really kind of sums up the direction that you want to go." And so when I think about company naming, I always think about what does it mean, what's behind that name. And I know that there's some companies that it's kind of like, well, I'm just gonna pick something, and it works. But I always, for me, that's one of the big kind of things is I want the name to have a meaning that I can link back into the company. And Elliptical does. I mean,
I think it
yeah,
works. I do think it works.
and so I think that's I agonize over names, and I always have. In fact, a lot of times I get blocked on a concept because I can't get the name that fits the way I want.
If you say so.
I know it's people tell me it's it's like you shouldn't get blocked into this, and I'm like, look, that's the way I work.
Okay.
For better or worse.
So that's the big secret behind the company.
So, what was out of these lists of 100 things? What were some of the weirder things that you had?
Well,
so
some
I know you got to remember some of them.
Some of them were, like what
Uh-huh.
were personal.
Yeah.
Passionate about bicycling, passionate about swimming, Boy
Mhm.
Scouts. Okay, well, I'm not really looking. I don't think I'm going to make it as a professional swimmer, if there is such a thing, right?
Wow.
Certainly not going to make it as a professional cyclist at this point in my life. So those were some of
So
them.
where they intersect is
Right.
They,
They
there was no
filtered out
intersection.
because there was no intersection. Correct. I am pragmatic. I've always had that going for me. It's like, okay, this is going to have to sell. This has to work.
Did you do the Venn diagram for them? No.
I don't know that I did a Venn diagram, but I would look through it. Yeah. It was a good exercise, and I actually would urge everybody to do that.
Well,
Even in your car, and even if it's not business, what's your personal life like? If you're feeling a little bit maybe lost, and right now, right with the quarantine, I think a lot of people are reevaluating themselves
and
and
that
their
is
life, kind of like post 9/11 in a way.
Yes.
It's like, you know what?
That's
Let's not take all this for granted. What do I really want?
That's again one of the real big things that we're seeing is
Oh yeah.
there's so many people now that were undervalued before in their position, and now they're looking at pivoting to new positions. Not willing to live undervalued anymore, and so again, I look at things like this whole COVID-19, is having an underside of it that's actually there's positive things to it. As bad as it
There are
is,
silver
linings. The way, and that is that a lot of people that were in a position that they felt underappreciated, undervalued, that now it might have been a painful circumstance to have to move out of that because at least you were paying the bills. But
most people, right, will lean into a better the devil you know than the devil you do not know.
Yes.
So you'll stay. But I agree, after the quarantine by now, people, I'm not willing to stay to be undervalued and underpaid. That's part of it.
And I'm
unhappy.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, of course. I look at this and I run into people all the time that say, well, I'm worth this amount of money, and I always say, well, if your employer is not willing to pay that, you've really got two choices, and that is stay with your employer, find another employer, or you go and do something else that is going to pay you what you're worth. In other words, if you don't think that the market's gonna pay you what you're worth, then start your own company, start your own business, and pay yourself whatever you think you're worth. And so if you think that you're worth millions a year, and you build a company that's going to make that kind of money, and that's the goals that you have. And again, it sounds a whole lot easier to say it like that than it really is. But that's the way I view things. Instead of trying to change your employer and say, well, you need to value me, because you're never going to make somebody else value you if they don't.
That I could probably agree with.
And so your other options are to create your own value, and that's,
I like that.
and that's where I've always kind of looked at it when I talk with other people about this, and they tell me these kind of things. So just couple little background questions there. So how about I've got one or two more things to ask you about your company, and so where was your biggest, what you would think of, accomplishment in the company over the years that you've been in business?
The fact that we're still in business.
Okay.
Keep in mind, all right, I started in '96. When we survived the tech bust of the early 2000s, we survived 9/11. It didn't really affect us much in New Orleans.
Hmm.
We survived Hurricane Katrina, which absolutely affected us tremendously. The recession, we survived the recession of 2008. And now we're surviving the quarantine. We are survivors. One of the things, this I tell my children this, is that we land on our feet
Hmm.
because we have to. There is no safety net when you're a small business. It's you. You have to roll with it. You have to find the silver lining, and you have to work with that. After a couple of these, we were definitely different companies. We looked like a different company to some degree. And what it meant was we had to shed what no longer worked and lean in, as my executive business coach likes to say, and lean into the parts that did work. Definitely, especially after Katrina, because we didn't even know if we still had a client base at that point. For a while, we actually were in New York for a couple of months. I have family up there. And even after we came back to New Orleans, I was flying back up to New York every couple of weeks for a few days, trying to create a new secondary client base up there. Ultimately, that didn't really pan out for the expense that it was having.
I'm telling you that was really good advice about basically, you've got nothing to fall back on at this point. You've got to
That's the
roll.
reality of
You've
it.
got to roll with it. So I'm going to ask you if there's anything else. So one of the questions that I had for you, and you might have just answered it, is, for entrepreneurs out there, what is your big advice when you're looking at, so what comes
I
to
kinda
mind?
expected this was gonna happen.
What comes to
What comes
mind
to
as advice for you?
I would say maybe three. One is do something you love to do because you're going to do it a lot. Because I was up late at night. When I started my company, I was still working at an engineering firm.
Mhm.
And I would get up at 6 a.m. and I would do a couple hours of programming, or I actually did web development itself at the very beginning.
Mhm.
Go to my job. I actually then get the kids up, get them off to school, go to my job all day, come home, be with the family, do the family, put the kids to bed. They were small at the time. At about 10 p.m., I would go back to work. I'd work till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., get up at 6 a.m. the next day. And I did that for 3 years until I went full time. So I would say, number one, do something you love and that you're truly good at. Number two, you must have customers. It goes nowhere without customers. You have to go out, you have to meet people, whatever makes sense, you have to do it. And figuring out what you have to do. I wasted trying lots of different things in the early days with advertising here and there, because you didn't really advertise on the internet back then. Actually, offline advertising back in the late 90s was still the way to go. You absolutely have to get customers. And this is where you lean into the part that scares you, probably. The obstacle is the way. Is that the Stoics who say that? I'm not sure. I've heard that. Where I hear a lot of things, right? The obstacle is the way. What you're most afraid of doing is probably what you need to do the most. Just go do it, do it badly, and get better at it through practice. It's a skill. Learning to talk to people is a skill, and I'm living proof of that. Like any skill, you can learn it with practice. Depending on the type of business you have, but you have to get customers. Without customers, you don't have a business. The IRS says you don't. You have a hobby, right? If you're not making money.
You're so right about the idea of, again, meeting with people, networking, all of those things. Those are skills. And I've had people before tell me, "Oh, Jim, I don't think I could do that." And I'm like, no, it's a skill. And the more you practice it, the better. I've had people tell me, sit in front of a mirror and talk to
Oh,
yourself.
absolutely. And it feels weird the first
And
time
talk to
you start
yourself.
practicing,
It's the most
right?
bizarre thing in the whole world.
So
but
you've got an elevator pitch, and you've got to be able to roll it
yes,
off. You've got to know it.
yes.
The first few times I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and talked
Yep.
to myself, it was weird.
Yeah.
But I did.
Yes.
And nobody was there to look at it, right? I didn't want anybody to see it and hear it, just to get through the words, because it's only going to be harder in front of a room of people. Absolutely. So you've got to practice, right? The more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. There's a few variations on that one. I'm going to leave one more. I said there might be a third one.
Okay.
The third one is know your value. I'm going to mention another book, and this actually comes from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program. The book is Bring Yourself, the Power of Connection in Negotiations. The author is Morrie Tahirapour. They actually flew her down from, she teaches negotiations at University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. And they brought her down to New Orleans for our cohort for the 2 negotiation modules. And then she came out with a book sometime, I think, early in the quarantine or right before. They she even quotes one of my own people from my own class. And it's a fantastic book. Although the application is negotiations, it's really about knowing your value. And that's a book I would recommend to everybody. Know what you bring to the table. People will absolutely try to beat you up on price. When you're early on in business, you're going to let them, but over time, you'll learn to stand your ground. And more than just really refusing, you'll learn how to explain to them how to get across why you're worth the price you're asking and why they should pay that to you. And that takes time. That will absolutely take time and practice, some blood, sweat, and tears, I'm afraid.
And I am.
That might be like the single biggest lesson in 25 years.
I'm telling you right now, I am going to read this.
You're gonna get on Amazon.
Because this is something that I have struggled with for years and years, and everybody tells me that I undervalue myself.
I would agree.
And okay.
All right. So that's the one big lesson of becoming learning, knowing your value, and communicating that to people so they are in a way that they are willing to pay you what you believe you should.
I think
it's not just business,
right?
Personal relationships, family members.
I agree with you 100% here, because and it's something that I have absolutely struggled with, and I think that's part of me coming out of the education system, because while I was doing a lot of this other work, I still had a position being paid in the education system. So you ended up doing a lot of these other things basically for free and not placing the value on what they really are. And now I'm faced with going, well, wait a second, there is a lot of value in this. I just don't know how to, utilize it right. I'm putting the cart before the horse in some ways, So I am definitely gonna take you up on that and read this book, because I need
I would say that all of our folks in TV land. Right. If you take one thing away from this talk, is actually knowing your value. And I recommend that book, Bring Yourself, Power of Connection in Negotiations by Morrie, Morrie Tahirapour. I'm not going to be able to help you with spelling that. But if you get through the name and the first name on Amazon, you can order it.
So we got a question in here, and so from our studio audience here. So John came in and he says, "Do you have a pivot that didn't work out, and how did you unpivot?"
Ooh,
cool question.
That is a great one. The answer is we must have. There's unquestionable, because you keep trying things. You have to keep trying things. Can I remember anyone specifically? See, I just block all that out. There's a lot vying for your attention, and that doesn't need it after a point. Did we? We must have. We absolutely must have. Well, I would say so, actually. Probably between our second and third pivots, where we stopped doing web design and only did software development plus the hosting. And the next one in 2014, we just stopped doing the software development, so we could focus only on the hosting. So I would say that. Now, the question, and if he wants to respond back, John, is how did we pivot out of it? we just stopped offering it, stopped doing it. Now, if we were under contract to finish something, we absolutely have to finish that. I've always strongly believed you have to have the integrity. You cannot afford to, I mean, it's in Psalms or Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs. A good name is worth more than gold, right? You cannot allow yourself to have a reputation of either being a liar or not being following through or whatever. You have to be good for your word. I don't know if John, if you can answer. Have I answered your question? Reply back and see if we have. That you just like pivoting into it, you stop doing it. Now you have to honor any contracts, including if you've signed up with a vendor and have to pay it out. I've absolutely had to do that. Unquestionably, I have had vendors at some point. It's like, this is no longer serving our customer or serving us, our company, and we need to drop it. And sometimes you're under contract for a couple of years, right? I try to keep contracts under a year, or certainly no more than a year. The internet, things change fast, and I've never gone for one of these sign up for 3 years. Like, I don't know about that. The internet's going to look different in 3 years.
The world keeps changing, constantly.
I see a little something.
Let's see. He says, yes, sir.
All right, got one right. What else do we have?
So I think we are just about getting to the end of our time here today. So I always like to wrap up with just some kind of fun questions. And so I always
I'm a software developer. There is no
no, there's always fun questions. So I just I guess little kind of quirky things about you. Movies. Favorite movie quotes.
Favorite movie quotes. Well, my probably number one all-time favorite movie is going to be The Princess Bride.
Okay.
It's highly quotable. The whole inconceivable thing, right? When we get a lot of that. I did have some fun. This is online magic game. You like wizards. It's actually a children's game. I was playing with the children, and one day there was one quote coming out of the book. Out of the movie Princess Bride, about Fezzik the Giant is saying he's fighting. Oh God, come on, Jack, the hero. He's like, why are you giving me so much trouble? It's like, well, I'm not used to fighting groups. I actually got to say that while playing this game because I had been fighting groups mostly, and it was a one-on-one battle, and I didn't have the right card deck to do it with. So that's a popular one. This is going to sound funny. I actually alluded to it earlier. The Disney movie, Let It Go, Frozen. That's actually that expression, let it go. Absolutely. Let things go that no longer serve you. And that can be hard to do sometimes. So that's two. There's plenty more.
You made me think of one with the idea of using quotes like this. And one of the ones I always use is when I'm talking with friends of mine and they'll say, hey, can you help me with this? And my favorite, comes from the Lord of the Rings, where he goes, I will help you bear this burden, Frodo Baggins, as long as it is yours to bear. And the funny thing is, that friends of mine, they went to a wedding about a year or two ago that was Lord of the Rings themed. And they were like, they couldn't remember the quote. And I'm like, how could you not remember this?
Remember that quote, right?
So I got one more question, I think, enough time for maybe one more, and then we'll, if there's any more audience questions, actually, I want two more questions for you. So one of these is one of my friend Michelle's favorite questions to ask people. If you were on an island, food that you would bring, the one and only food that you could have, what would you bring? What would it be?
Wow, I'm kind of stumped on that one.
It's a great question, and I tell
bread,
you,
probably
bread. Okay,
bread. It's New Orleans French bread, Italian loaf. You can't go wrong with that.
Okay,
like loaf or something.
That is a great answer.
I guess, which is funny because I'm trying to eat right now. Maybe I'm just missing an awful lot.
So
I guess that's
this is one when we would go fishing that we'd go around the boat and say, okay, so what's so it's a cool question.
Foodie, I guess.
It's a neat question.
What other
I got one more for you then. What's on the playlist right now to listen to?
Okay. There's no music on my playlist.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Audiobooks?
Audiobooks, they tend to be YouTube, TED
Okay.
Talks.
Okay.
That's really what I do. Back when early in the quarantine, I was actually doing my own lawn, and I had gotten these, Bluetooth noise cancellation that would also work with my phone, so I could actually hear. And I would just, it's almost like, what struck me at the moment that I felt like hearing about, and then I would listen to a few different ones over and over. But they're TED Talks, either, golly, I'm trying to remember now, it was a year and a half ago. What the kinds of stuff I was listening to at the time, but it tends to be TED Talks.
Okay.
The short, right? Because they're short. First of all, they're supposed to be short. Well, that helps because my attention span isn't that long anyway. If you can't say it in 20 minutes, you probably can't say it. You can't get to the meetup in 5 minutes. You're probably not there. So that's typically what I do. But that's just me personally. If you like music, have at it.
Sure. For me, I've tried a lot of times, like doing the audio files and listening to publications.
Sure.
And I always find that I'm more engaged when I read. So
I'm a reader.
I can't. Yeah,
I love
I can't.
physical book. There's nothing like cuddling up on the couch or in bed with a book and
I
a cup
agree.
of tea and maybe a highlighter if it's that kind of a book. But I read a lot. On my nightstand next to the bed are piles of books that I'm in the middle of reading. I'll read. It's just the way it is. Actually, I just signed up for a local book club, so I'm now reading another book along with everything else that I'm trying to get through.
Want to give the name of that book?
The book is The Four Agreements, which is very popular. But that's what they said it's going to be. And I already recommended, hey, if you're interested in more titles for us to read in the book, here's the one by Maury. Bring yourself. I don't know if they're going to do it yet or not, but I'm ready for that one. So maybe I answered your question. I'm not sure. I do tend to live in my head a lot, and rather than a playlist, if I've got time, whether it's driving or cycling, I'm just going to let my thoughts run through. Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, I think we're gonna wrap up the fireside chat today with Jack Reiner, and Jack.
I appreciate you coming on this journey with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening, and I hope you learned something.
Okay. See you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Are we stopped?
Yes, we are stopped.